You know that the anti-gay law in your country drew a huge amount of condemnation by many of your friends outside and obviously many people inside Uganda. It has been defeated and reversed. Are you pleased that it's been defeated and reversed, or would you like to see it passed again?
We are discussing that issue among ourselves in our party, and when we decide how to move, we shall inform the public. We are discussing it internally within our party.
But you're the leader of your party. You don't want to see it passed again, do you?
No, I don't want to speak before we have reached a consensus. When it was initially passed, I did not sign the bill initially. Later on, I signed it because of some provocations from outside, because we didn't like lectures which were emanating from certain quarters. But later on, we have been having very intensive internal discussions, and when we conclude, we shall inform the public. And it would be their private issue.
Well, it obviously hasn't been ignored, has it? I mean, we've had gay activists who've been murdered. Just last year, we saw a leading gay activist murdered in your country. We now have a parliament which is considering new legislation which would massively increase the punishments for homosexuality, from up to 14 years in prison to a new punishment of life in prison. What is your view as president of that proposal?
My view is that I do not support promotion of homosexuality, but I do not support persecution or discrimination of homosexuals as our society has always done. We never discriminated them. We never marginalized them or discriminated against them.
But Mr. President,
what people resent is promotion.
If the Parliament passes this legislation pushing for life imprisonment for homosexuality, will you block that legislation?
It will depend what the life sentence is for. Is it for promotion, for instance, recruiting young children into that practice by offering money? That's where the problem is. Inducement, manipulating, using money which they collect from the West. That's what I would also not like.
You yourself said just a couple of years ago, you said gay relationships are against God's will. You clearly believe there is a religious as well as a legislative and political need to take action against homosexuality.
Well, it is true that God cannot, it must be, I have not studied the science of how people become homosexuals, but certainly the normal way is to be heterosexual, because that's what nature created us for. But maybe there are some exceptions for some good scientific reasons. If they are there, our culture is keep your private life to yourself. Do not impose it on others. Do not promote it. Just keep your own confidential sexual life to yourself.
A final thought on this. Barack Obama, for one, but other Western leaders as well, have said that they will tie future aid and development funding in a host of countries, including yours, to what they see on the human rights front, but particularly on these gender and sexual identity issues. How do you feel about that?
That would be their biggest mistake, because they should be very careful about Black Africa. Black Africa are humble people. We never impose our views on anybody else. We are not like Europeans or like Arabs who want to impose their views. I normally tell people that when I hear Arabs talking of haram, that's something which is haram. I always tell them that my list of haram is much longer than that one of the Arabs. I don't eat fish because I call it snake. I don't eat chicken because I think if you eat chicken, you will be unstable. I don't eat pigs. I don't eat very many of those things which you people eat. Even when I come here, I have a problem of what to eat. But I keep this to myself. This is the difference with the black people.
Well, if you're determined to keep it to yourself, can I take it then that you will sack your Minister for Ethics, who just a few days ago took it upon himself to invade a meeting of gay human rights campaigners, closed down the meeting, forced them all out? Will you now sack him? Because he invaded their personal space.
I would have to study what they were doing. You see what, this question, I have told you, homosexuality is not criminal, if it is personal, you are not discriminated, you are not persecuted. But when you induce young people, so it depends on what they were doing. Those homosexuals, what were they doing?
You told me when I mentioned Barack Obama's position on this that you said, you know, Western governments and leaders, they need to be careful. Let's just explore that idea a bit further. You know, you said not so long ago, Western countries do not listen carefully. They are full of themselves. They think they know everything. Sounds like you are rather frustrated in your relations with what are supposed to be some of your closest partners in Western capitals. Well,
they are our close partners, but they should avoid, like this one of saying, tying aid to promoting homosexuality. I can tell you many African people will not accept it. And it will be a very big mistake.
Yeah, let's just talk then about what you are doing with the United States, for example. At the moment, I believe they have 100 military advisors working closely with your government. I know they've given you tens of millions of dollars of military assistance, all of it, I think, aimed to fight the Lord's Resistance Army, the insurgent group who've done so much damage, killed so many people in the north of your country. Is it your belief that with US assistance, even though the leader Joseph Kony is no longer in your country, that you can now, once and for all, destroy the Lord's Resistance Army?
We defeated that group. That's why they fled very far from Uganda. They are now in Central African Republic and very, very far, about 1,000 miles away.
So what are these military advisors for then?
To help working with the US people and with those countries where the remnants of Kony's people are, to help those countries to stop Kony from killing and kidnapping.
So I suppose my question is, are Ugandan forces going to go after Kony and his people, wherever they are?
They're already doing it.
So you're going to go into the Central African Republic?
We are already there.
Yeah, and you're going to take this to the very end. You think there is a military solution to this, do you?
Oh yes, oh yes. There is a military solution. It has already pacified the whole of Uganda. The whole of Southern Sudan is peaceful from Kony activities. He's only now in Central African Republic. We can hunt him there, and there are just a few remnants. They are much less than they used to be.
If that is your belief, that you can find a military solution to the LRA problem, do you believe the same thing about Somalia, where you have got thousands of troops, the biggest single contributor to the African Union military mission in Somalia? Do you believe that if you ramp up the mission even more, as is being discussed right now, that you can destroy the Al-Shabaab movement in Somalia?
Somalia is a different issue. It's not just military, it is also political. So you cannot just talk of a military solution. A military solution is part of the effort, but it must be accompanied by political negotiations and ensuring that there is an accountable government in some foreseeable future.
But to be clear, you do want to see, I think the current mission is about 12,000 strong and pretty much half of the troops are from Uganda. You want that force to go up to about 17,000,
yes,
right?
yes.
And how many men are you prepared to put on the ground in Somalia?
Well, Uganda is a country of 34 million people. So we are not short of people. We can mobilize any size of army to help our people.
I just wonder if there is a danger here for Uganda. I think in 2010 you had a terrible incident on the streets of Kampala. A bomb went off, we believe planted by the Islamist militants from Somalia, killed more than 70 people. There is a danger, is there not, of Islamists, jihadis, looking at Uganda and seeing a target that they want to hit?
Those jihadists are really non-African in their attitudes. I've told you about the attitude of the black people. I've told you how I have got my long list of haram, but I never impose it on anybody else. It is my private business.
When you speak like this, Mr. President, it makes me feel that you don't want to see Islam in Africa. You seem to be suggesting to me that somehow Africa is not compatible with Islamic belief and thought.
Not at all. Not at all. Because 20% of the people of Uganda are Muslims.
Sure, and you can look around Africa. There are huge Muslim communities all over the continent.
Many of the people in my party are Muslims. Muslims are my biggest supporters. But our Muslims do not engage in that type of chauvinism. They keep their views to themselves, their beliefs to themselves. So do the Christians, so do the traditional groups. That's how we live in harmony.
I just wonder whether you look at your long rule and at your your beyond borders engagements with your military forces, at a long and extraordinarily costly engagement in the Democratic Republic of Congo from '98 to 2003, the forces that you've now got in Somalia, the forces you've got in Central African Republic fighting the LRA, whether you believe that in the end you've resorted too often to military solutions.
No, you need to remember the history of Africa. Our brothers in Mozambique got their freedom because they were assisted by Tanzania, by Zambia. That's how they were able to defeat the Portuguese. We were able to defeat Idi Amin because we were assisted by Tanzania, by Zambia, by Mozambique. Africa has come this far because where we work together, we move forward. Worked together and defeated the white racists in Southern Africa, in Mozambique, in Zimbabwe, in Angola. We defeated Idi Amin, and we are ready to work together to defeat these foreigners who are coming with these chauvinistic ideas from the Middle East to implant them in our continent. In our continent, we black people, we live and let live. We never try to impose our views on anybody else. Like this business of saying, I will not give you aid unless you change your position on homosexuals. And yet for us, we have got our own way of how we have dealt with homosexuals before we even came in contact with the Europeans. Why don't they let them handle it our way?
Keep out.
Absolutely.
Before we end, Mr. President, a man you know well, George Kanyahamba, who's a former minister, I think he was a former Supreme Court Justice for you. He said not long ago, he said, if the Yoweri Museveni of 1986 were to meet the Yoweri Museveni of today, they would fight on sight. In fact, he said they would probably shoot each other. Is that true?
No, it is the same Yoweri Museveni. He was for democracy and for socio-economic transformation. It's the same Yoweri Museveni, no change at all.
Are you sure he's as convinced and as strictly sticking to his principles today as he was then?
Absolutely, even more than that time, because I'm now more informed. I have got more facts, more exposure. I know how to run governments, which I didn't know very well at the beginning. I was just an idealist, but I know how to deal with the policy issues now.
What is your message to Western human rights groups, to President Obama, to lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender people?
Respect African societies and their values. If you don't agree, you just keep quiet. Let's manage our society the way we see. If we are wrong, we shall find out by ourselves. Just the way we don't interfere with yours.
Do you personally dislike homosexuals?
Of course, they are disgusting. What sort of people are they? How can you go? I never knew what they were doing. That's how I've been told recently that what they do is terrible, disgusting. But I was ready to ignore that if there was proof that that's how he's born, abnormal. But now the proof is not there.
President Zain Verji, CNN, the West. They do make it an issue. They have been making it an issue for many months now. Many in the international community are saying that by your signing of this bill, you're taking Uganda a step backwards, that you are not protecting the freedoms and the rights and the choices of the Ugandan people. So how do you respond to that? And specifically, President Obama has said he was deeply disappointed by Uganda's move and says that it would complicate US-Uganda relations. I've listened to everything that you've said in the statement. So how would you respond to that? And does it worry you? And have you spoken directly to President Obama about this?
Well, we have been disappointed for a long time by the conduct of the West, the way you conduct yourselves there. But we just keep quiet. We just see how you do things, how the families, how they are organized, in all these things. We see them, we keep quiet. We never comment because it's not our country. Maybe you like it. So, since there is now an attempt at social imperialism to impose social values of one group on our society, then our disappointment is now exacerbated because we are sorry to see that you live the way you live. But we keep quiet about it. Now you say we must also live like us. That's why we say no. We say no. And am I worried? Not at all. We should be worried about what? Because to tango needs two people to dance. If the West doesn't want to work with us because of homosexuals, then we have enough space here to live by ourselves and do business with other people.
Yes, Dick, and then we go to Catherine Byarhanga.
There is Bairunga. I want to hear Bairunga.
Catherine, you can come forward.
Your Excellency, you talked about...
When will your BBC pronounce your name well, please?
I don't know. Your Excellency, you talked about the scientific report that was presented to you by these scientists in front of us. They didn't say that homosexuality was abnormal. They said there were a range of reasons why somebody could be homosexual. There are genetic reasons as well. So you can't dismiss that somebody could be born homosexual. So isn't this just a political bill? It's nothing to do with science.
No, the report says, first of all, you know that many of our homosexuals are actually mercenaries. They are heterosexual people who just become homosexual just because of money. They are prostitutes.
But how do we prove that? Is there
no. Let's first, that's the biggest category here. These are prostitutes for money. They are normal people. They are just recruited because of economic hardships. They go into that. Now, the other smaller category, which I was defending, their conclusion is there is no single example of a purely nature-driven homosexual. Yes, there could be some association. Some of those studies showed that there could be some association with the genetics, but the people who grew up in certain environments are the ones who eventually became homosexuals. While the same identical twins, the children from the same egg, from the same ovary, same ovum, what they call monozygotic twins, what we call identical twins in our normal life. You find one is, the other one is not. And when that study they made, they found it was the environment which triggered this fellow to go that way. So therefore, they are definite that nature without nurture, you cannot get a homosexual. That's what they are saying. Yeah. That nature without nurture, you cannot get a homosexual. So why don't we remove this nurture? The society removes this nurture. Instead of the way the Western societies are presenting it, that there are two options. This is like a menu. You go to a hotel, you can choose either this or that. You know, our people are, and by the way, those people, the Western people you are talking about, because I pinned them down, I said, you put your signature on this. They couldn't. I don't want to quote names because this was in confidence. One of them, just the other night, I was on the phone with one of my people in the West, my friends in the West. The person said, there is no reputable scientist who can put his signature to the opinion that nature is the one which causes homosexuality. That's what somebody told me on the phone. But it's a matter of choice. Now they are shifting. I think this is very, very important. Uganda, as usual, may really trigger a very serious movement in the world. Because now, we now know that the natural part is a minority. The majority is the nature, the upbringing. You know, I'm not somebody who just follows things. Even these MPs, I was going to, if these people had said it was nature, I would never have agreed with the bishops and all that. That's not my issue. Because you remember Jesus was killed by bishops. So I don't listen to those groups, bishop, I don't know what. Because God gave me my head, I am mobile with it all the time. I don't follow any of those people. You remember who killed Jesus? The archbishop called Caiaphas. Caiaphas is the one who killed Jesus. So I don't listen to those groups. Yes, if they go with our core issue, we go with them, but I can't be guided by those groups. So it's now our logic. And we have taken time, we have studied it, this is our conclusion.
Thank you.
Yes, can we have Dick and then the other lady?
My name is Leila, I correspond for Deutsche Welle Kiswahili service. First question. The gay community in Uganda is requesting to have a meeting with you. Would you give them an ear? The homosexuals in Uganda, they are requesting to have audience with you. Yeah. So they say, no, hold on. No, they say their side of the story has not been heard and they would kindly beg to meet you so that you get to hear that side of the story. That's number one.
Now, the mistake of the Western, some of the Western groups, and I'm glad to see these people, wonderful people like the ones who are here, to know that in the West there are some still human beings who believe in normal life. They attempt to if there is a deviation from normal, if there is an abnormality, how would you seek to universalize an abnormality? And how would you seek to establish an abnormality as an alternative way of life? There are two ways of life, the normal and the abnormal, and then you put it there. If there is an abnormality, why don't you seek to treat the abnormality? And to isolate it, not spread it. So definitely there's something wrong with these groups, the leadership in the West. There must be some serious issue there, some structural problem. I can't know what it is because I have studied human evolution and philosophy. There's nothing, but there's something that's funny that is going on in some of these places. Do you agree? Because this is the core issue. do you agree that a homosexual is a psychological pervert? I want Banyomusi and Ayume to come and say either yes or no on the microphone. A psychological pervert, being perverted psychologically. Is that correct or not correct?
Co-perverts.
They are perverts. Thank you very much.
Yes, I also want to confirm that they are psychologically perverted and the condition is reversible.
Absolutely. Yes. So thank you. And we answer that. This original homosexual, what is his problem? Is it, for me I thought it was hormonal. But Wahome is saying, no, it is not hormonal, it is psychological. Huh? Yes. But because of me, I have been asking these questions whenever this issue comes up, and when we discuss with these lecturers from the Western countries who come to lecture us, I tell them that there is no way, because the homosexual, the few cases which we had here were definitely deviations from the normal. They are deviations from the normal. They are deviants. They are not the normal. If he goes further and rapes a person, a child, an indigent means a weak person, he commits a capital offense and he faces a maximum sentence of death. This is the law I signed. These are the three substantive points anti-homosexuality law. Before I conclude and talk about the planned legislative agenda for the coming session of Parliament, I cannot avoid commenting on the noise about the anti-homosexuality law that you enacted and I signed recently. My stand on homosexuality has been repeatedly laid out to all and sundry. It starts with a few questions. Why does somebody become a homosexual? Is it on account of genetic, hormonal, or psychological reasons? Discussions with our doctors and the other African doctors who had a conference with African members of parliament from 22 countries unequivocally led us to conclude that homosexuality is as a result of psychological disorientation at some point in one's life, not genetic and not hormonal, as some of us initially thought. This conclusion that homosexuality is a psychological disorientation gives us a way forward, logically, reasonably, without bias, without what? If somebody is a victim of psychological disorientation, do you criminalize him or her on account of that? Is it logical or fair to do so? The answer is no. Instead, such a person needs assistance to, if possible, overcome his psychological disorientation. I'm glad the MPs agreed with me and clarified this point in the law. Therefore, those who say that the homosexuals will be arrested if they go for medical care, etc., are wrong. The law now says that a homosexual will not be criminalized for merely being so, if he or she keeps the being to oneself. What then does the law fight? It fights this homosexual when he or she goes from merely being and starts recruiting other people who are not psychologically disoriented like him or her to be like him by misinforming or bribing them. There, he becomes a criminal, and if convicted, goes to prison for a period not exceeding 20 years. If he goes further and rapes a person, a child, an indigent means a weak person, he commits a capital offense and he faces a maximum sentence of death. This is the law I signed. These are the three substantive points. Being is your personal problem. Merely being a homosexual, that you find you are disoriented, you don't like the ones you should like, you like the ones you shouldn't like. Being is your personal problem. Promoting is criminal and qualifies you for prison. Raping qualifies you for a possible death sentence. So you people, when you are arguing with these people, go for the substance. Don't be diverted to these other. Additionally, in Uganda, sex is confidential, even heterosexual sex. Therefore, if a homosexual keeps his being to himself, or confidentially seeks assistance from the doctors or priests, it will not offend this law. I have told our MPs that if there are still some illogicalities in the law, such as forcing employers to know who is a homosexual in the company, or landlords to know which tenants are homosexuals, we shall work to amend them and keep the substance. We should go for the substance, not these other. Because I have heard some people talking about that. But I will call our MPs and we'll talk about it. Therefore, doctors and other health workers, providers, should assist those patients who come to them bearing the three substantive points in mind. I will arrange a dedicated broadcast on this issue toward the end of June. I will give a whole broadcast on this issue. Now, finally, you're about to be saved from me. I wish to end this address by thanking Parliament for enacting the following legislation during the last session. Out of the 62 bills presented to Parliament on the last State of the Nation address in June 2022, the following bills were introduced and passed. The Companies Bill 2022, the Insolvency Amendment Bill 2022, the Law Revision Bill 2022, the Museum and Monuments Bill 2022, the Physical Activity and Sports Bill 2022, the Anti-Terrorism Amendment Bill 2022, the Small Arms, they are all here. The following 5 were introduced by government in addition to the 62. I think the Speaker had also spoken about those. Now, there are these bills which are ready for second reading: the Employment Bill, the Competition Bill, the Public Service Pension Fund Bill. The following reports, as highlighted in the State of the Nation Legislative Agenda of June 2022, were processed and adopted. They are also listed here. Madam Speaker, it is now my pleasure to declare the third session of the 11th Parliament open. I thank you very much, and hope that the coming session will be fruitful. I thank you. This issue of homosexuality is a very serious issue, because it is an issue of the human race. So it's not something that you should discuss to be seen, to be what? No, 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 no. You only talk because you are sure of what you are saying. Otherwise, keep quiet. Don't add to the confusion. There is enough confusion already. Now, when we are discussing the issue of homosexuality, in the last 200 years, in this part of the world, Ankole, Kigezi, Buganda, Bunyoro, Karagwe, Tanzania. So, but it was a smaller number. I have had 5 names in the last 200 years. Because me, I'm from this area here. My clan is one of the oldest in this part of the world. Now, when this issue, at that time, of course, this was a private issue. People were not they were not encouraging it, but also they were not fighting it because it was like hidden, small secret of some few people. The problem with the Europeans is that they bring things which are out of place. So when it came up, 2014, now this time, I started trying to study this issue. What is it? Is homosexuality genetic? Is it in some people, some inherited? Is it hormonal? That somebody gets imbalance of hormones? Because there are some people who get those problems of hormones. The conclusion was no, this is a psychological disorientation by some people at some stage. It's not genetic, it's not hormonal, it is a psychological disorientation where somebody, because of some experience, hates the people he should love and loves the people he should not love. It's a type of like a sickness. So if that is the case, that suspicion of merely being suspected to be cannot be criminalized, cannot and should not be criminalized, because he is like a sick person. If somebody is sick, do you criminalize him for that? Now, I'm glad when they went back, apparently they cured this. This was what was cured. The problem is that, yes, you are disoriented. You have got a problem to yourself. Now, don't try to recruit others now. If you try to recruit people into a disorientation, then we go for you. We punish you. That's number one. But secondly, if you violently grab some children and you rape them and so on, we kill you. And that one I totally support, and I will support. The 3 positions. Number one, merely being suspected of being is not an offense in itself. You are a person to be helped if you want helped. because it was said that some of the people can be helped to get back to normal. But secondly, if you want now to disorient others, we go for you, we punish you by imprisonment. If you go beyond that and you start raping children and so on, we kill you.
Yes, sir.
So there, we are, so, but later on, a woman from the World Bank rang me, and I told her exactly as I'm telling you. I said, I'm going to sign the bill because of the 3 points I've told you. Mere being, no, we cannot criminalize you. Being and trying to recruit, we punish you by imprisonment. Raping, we kill you. So, but then the woman of the World Bank told me two other points, which although I've signed the bill, I would like us to look at it also ourselves, because I don't want to be on the side of wrong. In all these fights, I have never stood on the wrong side. Never. That's the line of the NRM. We never have two languages. What we tell you in the day is what we shall tell you in the night. So therefore, the woman of the world, so therefore the signing is finished, nobody will move us. But the woman from the World Bank told me two issues, for which I was going to return the bill again. Issue number one is requiring employers to make sure that there are no homosexuals in their company. Something like that. Something like you must ensure that the employers but how if that is there, I didn't read the whole bill, but if that is there, then we shall have to look at it, because it's really, you are wasting people's time to know how many people in the company are. That's what the woman of the World Bank told me. That's number one. If it is there, we shall have to sort it out. Now, the second one, where I think we would be on the wrong ground, is to blame real estate owners for houses being rented by homosexuals. If that is there, then we should sort it out. We don't have time to go into that now, but we shall have time for that. So these are the two areas which you should check again. So I was about to return the bill again, but then the end of last week, I was going through my papers, and I saw the letter from the Attorney General telling me that the issues I had raised with the whips had all been resolved, that I should now sign the bill, and I signed it. So, if you don't have the other weaknesses there, forget about all this nonsense. What I don't want is a SOV on our side. We don't want any SOV, any mistake, because you cannot say, I am an employer, I have got so many employers at Ksozi, how do I know who is a homosexual? And if I own a house, if I'm renting houses, how can I go to check the tenants who is homosexual and who is not homosexual? So please, otherwise, if we are sure that, because these are the only two weaknesses that I had if they are there. But otherwise, we shall move. If they cut aid, we shall sit down and discipline our expenditure, rearrange our budgets. If they interfere with our trade, we shall trade with others.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So that one is not my, and that's what I was telling you. The other time when I met you at Kololo, I said, you people, you should be ready for a war. And you cannot fight a war when you are a pleasure seeker, if you like a soft life. So war is not for soft life.